All right. There it is. With that, we'll go ahead and start the Budget Committee hearing at 2:00. We do have a new committee member. I want to thank Amy Winter Newton for being here, and let's give a warm welcome to her and her resplendent pink.
Thank you. I'm happy to join. So thanks for including me.
Well, we're happy to have you here, and we want to also welcome I'm going to turn it over to Andrew to talk about what's happening with the committee about our staff changes for the CFO. Andrew, are you willing to take that?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. And thanks, Mayor. Commissioner Stevenson already had the keen eye to say, hey, Lovett's here. Didn't she retire? I mean, we're very happy to have her, of course. And a few of you know this already, but you all remember that Lovett, who was our CFO for 27 years, Lovett, our excellent CFO, 26, and she retired over the course of the past year. And we went through a process and we hired Kurt Maurer, who is with us here, of course, as well, as our new CFO. Kurt, if you don't mind, I'm going to give the short version of your story. Kurt lives with his wife and his two young children in the Uinta Basin. And it was his intention to move from the Uinta Basin to the Wasatch Front. And ever since we hired him, he and his wife have been looking and trying to find housing. And, part of the challenge is that as we all know, we're all dealing with this in our work lives, at least. Housing has been just ridiculously expensive and, continues to get more and more expensive. The challenge for Kurt is that one of the only places in the state that housing prices have not appreciated materially is in the Uinta Basin. So he's caught in this very frustrating trap of, Kurt, just to be blunt about it, to sell low and buy high. And, he's got two young kids and needs space, and ultimately just, it just wasn't working to make the move here to the Wasatch Front. And he, again, Kurt, I'm speaking for you, but he wasn't looking for it, but he got another job offer there in the Uinta Basin and, thought hard about it with his wife and made the decision that the move to the Wasatch Front is just not going to be feasible at this point in his life. So I am sorry to report to everybody that Kurt is going to be leaving WFRC, and we're sad about that. And then to get to the third leg of the stool of the CFO roulette wheel, I am very happy to introduce you all to Marion Florence, who is with us today. Marion, we actually had already hired Marion to work with Kurt to be our what we call accounting specialist. And I will say this about Marion, we were all so excited to hire Marion, and candidly, and Marion, I hope you don't mind my saying this, we found her to be, if anything, overqualified for the accounting specialist, but we said, hallelujah, let's bring her in. And with Kurt's departure, we've talked about it and thought about it, and Marion has graciously agreed to serve as our CFO going forward. So we are now in a situation where we are graced in this meeting, not by one WFRC CFO, but by past, present, and future WFRC CFOs. And while as ridiculous as that might seem, the emphasis point here is continuity and the focus that we place on making sure that we do a good job in budgeting and accounting for the use of public tax dollars. We've taken a lot of pride in that, so we've taken that very seriously. And I want to just give a particular expression of appreciation to Jeff Scott, Commissioner Scott, who has helped us along this entire process. And I consulted with him about Marion also, and he's just been great. And then also expression of just so much gratitude to Lovett, who, when she found out that Kurt was leaving, volunteered the next morning to come back and help us out. That's just the kind of person that Lovett is. She cares about the organization and the work. She didn't have to do it, but she volunteered to do it.
So Andrew, I just got a question for you on that. So is it like Lovett just happened to call you that morning and
No.
say, what's going on? Or, was you
No.
kind of
The
just
night-
let her know that there could be a situation?
The night before, we got in touch with Lovett and said, guess what? We just heard from Kurt. So I'm not trying to say anything negative about Kurt, but we just told her because she was so involved and cared about it. And then the next morning she said, I want to help you. And then just, of course, all the best wishes to Kurt and his family and a huge welcome to Marion. We're so excited to have Marion. And I think Marion's first job, other than keeping all the accounting and the finance stuff going, with the ongoing help and assistance from Kurt and Lovett, who both have said will help you as we go, is to backfill the accounting specialist position that we brought her in for. So again, sorry to take so much time, but as the budget committee, it's really important for you all to know this and understand where we're at. And Marion, I didn't tell you I was going to do this, but I'm going to put you on the spot here just for a moment. Do you want to just introduce yourself briefly to the budget committee and just tell them a little bit about who you are and where you're coming to us from? And I'm sure everybody will get a chance to know you better over time.
Sure, thanks so much. And what a great team that I'm joining. I'm just thrilled. I came from Weilandman School of Discovery and doing charter school business management. So I was the business manager at that charter school and also worked in several other charter schools over the last 10 years. And so I've worked a lot with the USBE, the Board of Education, and with their state finance side, and done a lot of the same reporting requirements that we have at WFRC, and a lot of the same program accounting as well. So I live in the 9th and 9th area, really close by, and I've really enjoyed meeting this team so far, and I'm thrilled to be part of it.
Thanks, Marion. So as she's saying, Marion has a lot of experience with public funds and public budgets, with accounting, with auditing, with budgeting, with working with the board and executive director. And so it's just it's a great fortuitous fit. Marion, we're really happy to have you here. Okay, so Mr. Chair, that's sort of the background and introductions, but can I ask if Andrea just for the record, do a roll call here?
Please, Andrea.
Thank you. Today's call, we have Ned Hacker, Andrea Pearson, Lovett Baumgartner, Marion Florence, Andrew Gruber, Jeff Scott, Bob Stevenson, Amy Winder Newton, Mike Caldwell, Kurt Maurer, Wayne Benyon, Jeff Silvestrini, and Mike Newton. Did I already say that? Anyway, thank you. I think we got everybody.
Great. Mayor Caldwell, back to you then to take us through the agenda, if you would.
You're going to be surprised by this, Andrew, but I didn't have an agenda emailed to me.
Okay, well, we didn't send you a special one. We did send it out to all the members of the budget committee, but I would be more than happy to share screen and if you'd like, walk us through this.
I'd love you to share the screen and walk through it. And
Okay.
Kurt, I just want to say thank you for what you've done. You'll be missed. We appreciate what you're doing, and we want to wish you the best.
Yeah, I
Thank
want to
you.
share that. I mean, Kurt, I've worked with you approving all those invoices or anything like that. And I regret that we have this affordability problem along the Wasatch Front and in the footprint of WFRC. So it's really unfortunate that that's the reason that you can't stay here, but we fully understand it and wish you the best.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And I've just loved being part of the WFRC team. There isn't a better organization in the state.
I would agree with that, and it makes my heart sad that
Ogden City is a close second.
Hey.
That's good.
I appreciate that. So with that, we have number 2, the action item of approval of minutes from January 2013 and acceptance of financial statements and check registers for December 21 and January 2022, and the budget expenditure report to date.
Mr. Chair, having reviewed and approved those financial statements and check registers or whatnot, I we'll make a motion to approve the items listed in agenda item number 2.
Okay.
Thank you. We have a first and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that passes. Up next, we have public comment. Is there anybody from the public that wants to comment?
I'll just say to those who have not heard yet, if you're in the vicinity at 4 p.m. today, we're going to be turning shovels for a new city hall in Mill Creek. So you're all invited if you'd like to come.
I'll
Well,
be there.
that is if this meeting is over by 4, right?
No, it will.
Just kidding, just kidding.
Congratulations, Jeff, and I will drag this out as long as absolutely possible.
Good thing my computer has an off button.
You know I love long meetings. Oh, that's funny.
I'm starting to get some kind of problem with my internet right now, you know.
Oh, boy.
So, is there any other public comment? Hearing none, we have number 4, action recommended the council release the draft fiscal year 23 WFRC goals, budget, and unified working program for public comment. So we'll open that up.
So, Mayor, can I at this point take it away and walk us through these materials? Is that all right?
No, is there somebody else that can do that?
Well, yes, yes.
Hey, Andrew, you're losing control of this meeting, and that's not like you.
That's not a surprise with this group. Uh-huh.
No, Andrew, you got it.
We'll be
All right,
good.
thanks.
Let her rip. Let her rip.
Thanks. So this is the substantive item that for discussion today. And I will note to all of you, this is the first time through this process for Council Member Winder Newton, but Kurt and I had a chance to have a good visit and talk through some budget, WFRC budget basics, and she grilled us with really terrific questions that we welcome. All of the rest of you have been through this at least once before, but just as a reminder, every year, the process that we go through is that we do this at this meeting in March, Budget Committee, and then next week at Thursday's WFRC Council, where we do the goals for next fiscal year, the budget, and the Unified Planning Work Program, which is a comprehensive statement of all of the things that we may work on. That's actually required as part of our federal grants that come to us. The focus for this discussion will be on the goals and the budget. So we take action, we have this discussion. If there are any modifications to the materials coming out of this discussion, we will make those before we send materials to the full council, which meets next Thursday again. The council will review, has the opportunity to make changes, and then we release for public comment. We send it out, put it out to the public. We send the materials to all of the COGs in the region. We solicit any comment that may come. And then in May, we do this again, and we look at what modifications, if any, need to be made, Budget Committee and Council, and we take final action in May for the next fiscal year. So that's the process. Okay. What I want to do here is, again, hit on principally the two things, the goals and the budget. So I'm going to scan through the materials here that we already talked about. This is the same stuff that was emailed to you, except this is just in one package, the entire packet. And that's what Andrea dropped into the chat as we got started here. Now, the memo, the 5-page memo, walks through all of this and explains our thinking in detail. I'm going to skip over the memo, knowing that you've had the opportunity to read that. I'm not sure if you've had the chance to, and just go right to the first item, which is the goals. Now, here's our process that we use internally. Here's where we are today, present the draft goals to the Budget Committee. And we gave you, just so you could see what are the proposed changes, a comparison document. But it gets a little messy, as you can see here. So what I want to do, first, I'll just note to you that we are not proposing any changes to the actual top line goals themselves, 4 top line goals. But we are proposing modifications to the actions to be taken under those goals. But rather than walking through it in this way, because it's a little messy, what I'm going to suggest I'll do, this is the clean version of the goals here, okay? And what I'll do is just highlight for you just a few items that I think are notable differences. So the first goal is our top line, advancing collaboratively the Wasatch Choice vision, right, as a framework for integrating transportation. You can read it there. Being the fastest growing state in the nation, this is critical. And there's two things on here that I want to point out particularly that are new. It's these two. Further leveraging public assets for healthy communities. You all remember how Intermountain Healthcare gave WFRC $500,000, $250,000 this year and $250,000 next year. And they also gave it to the League of Cities and Towns to work on public assets and the social determinants of health. So that is what this goal reflects, that work that we would do. Salt Lake County's done a lot of work in this area, others have, but this is reflecting that. And then the second, well, it's item 4, but the second highlighted thing, develop station area plans. That's reflective of the really significant legislation that happened in just this last session, HB 462, requiring the creation of station area plans. And we, WFRC, as an organization, were central in putting that legislation together and will be very involved in helping communities. So those are just two highlights there, new items under this first goal. The second goal, effectively administering our ongoing plans and programs, that's our regular work that we just do year in, year out on the programs that we administer. And on this one, I want to highlight again 2 points here. This point B is the regional transportation plan. It's in some ways, it's the core of the work that we do here, the official role of developing the regional transportation plan. It's a 4-year process. Next year, a core of our work in that area is going to be the phasing of projects, meaning which decadal bucket are projects needed in, and when do we anticipate resources will be available within those decadal buckets. So that's the phasing and application of financial constraint. And then when we finish the plan, we would incorporate it into the broader Utah Unified Transportation Plan. That integration, statewide integration process is something we work through over the course of the next year. I'm highlighting these things as notable differences, not to diminish the importance or value of any of the other things that we do, but just noting important distinctions. I'm going to keep rolling here. The third goal, please feel free to interrupt me at any moment. You all know that I can build up quite a head of steam, so just interrupt me at any moment, okay? Point number 3 is subject matter expertise to federal, state, and local officials and policymakers, like the kind of work that we've been doing at the legislature in the past several months. Under this one, I want to highlight at the national level, this work, which is coming out of the infrastructure law that was adopted just a little bit ago nationally, that Mayor Silvestrini and Mayor Stevenson in particular were very involved in helping us work on. The implementation of that law now is critical. And 2 things to highlight here. One is coordinating with all of you and with the state of Utah to make sure that Utah competes as effectively as possible for resources to be brought in the competitive discretionary grants to cities and counties and MPOs and the state, et cetera. And then the second is we are working with USDOT right now and our national allies and peers and associations to help inform and shape the regulations that USDOT puts into place to actually implement all of the statutory changes. So those are some notable things I'd emphasize there. And then the last one is this bucket of striving for organizational excellence. This is where a lot of your work as a budget committee comes in accountability and transparency and efficient use of resources and budget stability. But I do want to note 2 things here again. One is this right here, update employee compensation and performance evaluation practices as needed to ensure market competitiveness. This is something we have been working on and is borne out to some extent in the proposed budget for next year. So I just want to highlight that, reflecting the fact that the health, happiness, and productivity of an excellent staff is the most important thing for us to have to provide great service in our region. Our staff is awesome, and we want to retain it bring in and retain a fantastic staff. So we'll get to that in a moment. The last thing I'll emphasize in the goals is this adapting to a post-pandemic new normal. We're all doing that, right? And so I'll throw out to all of you that with your assent, our plan next week for the council meeting is to have our first actual in-person council meeting in 2 years. I know most of you in the public sector, you've been doing this already. And unless you all say no and object, our plan is to move in that direction with the idea that over time, some of our meetings will be virtual, some of our meetings will be in person. We'll see. We are also starting next week for the first time, bringing our staff back into the office. You'll see several of us are here already, but requiring for the first time 2 days a week that our staff are all in on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And then the other days will be optional work at home or in the office days. So we're going to give that a try. That is a summary of the goals. And so Mayor Caldwell and any others, I would be more than happy to just pause there and see if there's any reaction or questions to any of these goals or the subcomponents of them.
I'll just say personally, I really miss seeing all of you in person. Like the last 2 years have been exceedingly hard. And I think it does help to get everybody together and talk about different things that we're doing and everything else. So, but I don't miss driving to Salt Lake at $5.50 a gallon. I have an F-150 and it's a hybrid, but it still is it's a big time dump, but it's totally worth doing it to see all of you in person. And I really look forward to doing that. So I support you getting everybody together next week, and I'll certainly be there. And I think that that's important.
Mike, if you want to meet me at the Layton train stop, I can turn around and buy your pass.
There we go.
And we can ride the train down together.
I got you.
Not exactly.
All right, Bob, I got you.
And Andrew will pick us up on his scooter right outside the.
The Front Runner station, we moved our offices here intentionally. The Front Runner station is right there. And Andrea, if I'm wrong, haven't we said we'd give passes, transit passes to our members if they want to use them to come in here? Didn't we say that a few years ago? I can't remember.
I can't remember either, but I'm sure we can work it out.
Andrew, I'll take that. I was part of the guy that said, look, no, you totally need to do that. You need to be the example for the state in terms of planning and master planning and everything else. So I think in some regards you did that via pressure from me. And so, yeah, Bob, I'll meet you there and we'll write the train down together. And
but Andrew, you got to remember something. Caldwell and I are getting old, and you may be close, but you're not that close.
It's a block. We're good. We're good.
You'll be fine. I'm quite sure. Does anybody have any other comments or reactions on the draft goals for next year?
I'd make a motion, we approve them.
I'll second it.
All right, first and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Andrew, I'll just make a executive comment that I think that's amazing, and we really appreciate what you guys have done. And
thank you.
You continue to lead out on so many levels and so many fronts. And I think everybody on the screen right now is looking at, we have staff retention and difficulty with that and everything else. So anything you can do to create a positive work environment and everything else, I think we would all support.
Yeah,
thanks.
Including addressing the challenges that we're all going to face about cost of living increases and that kind of stuff.
Well, you guys are teeing me up nicely for transitioning into the budget. And just a clarifying, the actions taken here today function as recommendations to the council. The council would act next week to release these items for public review and comment with final action in May. Okay. Okay. So if it's okay with you all, I'm gonna move on to the budget now. Okay? All right. I should say, as I'm moving towards the budget materials, all of this, the goals, the budget is reflective of a highly collaborative process between all of the team at WFRC. Okay. On the budget, what I think I want to start on here, all of this information is in what's been sent to you. Lots of detail. We have highly detailed footnotes that explain everything. I would be more than happy, along with our panoply of CFOs, to answer any questions that you may have. But I want to do two things here, basically. I want to start by talking a little bit about the revenue side and then turn to the expenditure side, okay? On the revenue side, I mean, there's lots of stuff on the screen here, so just sort of like putting that aside for a moment, let me give you an overall picture. We are in good shape as an organization in terms of our revenues. All right. You all know, and you can see here that the overwhelming majority of our revenues come from federal sources. So we kind of live and die with the ups and downs of the federal process. As I mentioned already, the federal government just passed a new 5-year transportation authorization bill, which provides the majority of the funds that come to do the work that we do. That comes from these sources, the PL or planning funding, Surface Transportation Program, the Federal Transit Administration. And those funds coming in have actually been increased. I mean, the entirety of federal transportation spending is increased. And there's been a corresponding increase in the neighborhood of 20% to the funds that we get. Had been flat for a few years, and then it jumps up by about 20%, and then has modest inflationary growth going forward. The thing that's great about that is that we were getting worried about the budget in terms of a separation between what we're annually spending and what the revenues are coming in, which is part of why we work so hard to make sure that we got a federal bill passed that has a little bit of an increase that helps us have stability and addresses the huge inflationary pressures that we're facing. So big picture, we're in really good shape. Now, you might say, well, wait a second, if you got a percentage increase in those things, why are the numbers not just showing a nice, clear percentage increase? And that is because the way that we put the budget together here, the sources of funds is actually tied to our expenditures. Everything matches, right? Revenues match expenditures. And so we are drawing in from the various sources, and this is what our CFOs have to do, really carefully navigate the mix of funding sources to our various programs carefully. And so we're drawing in the resources that we need to handle our budget. And also, as you know, we've set up effectively a practice of maintaining roughly an unexpended or unobligated balance of around 6 months to protect us against those swings or cutoffs in federal dollars. So the amount of money we may be drawing in at any one time is to some extent dependent on the programs that we have going and the revenues that we need. But big picture, federal funds, good. The other thing I want to note to you, maybe two other things on the revenue side here. This line I'm trying to highlight here, this is funding from the state. We historically have received $140,000 ongoing funding from the state. This year, an appropriation was just adopted, ongoing appropriation that we and every other AOG, Association of Governments in the state, is going to get another $150,000 additional every year, which is why you see that state funding going up to $290,000. That will enable us to hire another staff person to provide local technical and planning assistance to our communities. So we're psyched about that. And then the last thing I want to mention is actually the county contribution. So I'm going to jump right down here. Can you all see this clearly? Should I blow it up a little? It's good. Everybody's good. Okay.
One quick question about that. Counties actually make contributions?
Yeah. We go out and beg money so we can send it down there.
I was just making sure. All right.
You can too, if you would like to, but we don't ask you to do so specifically.
Cities do, but I was just wondering about counties.
No, well, I mean, it's actually been great. this has been in practice long before I was at WFRC. But, you know, at some point in the past, the COGs and the counties made a decision that the counties would essentially make relatively modest contributions to WFRC sort of on behalf of all of the cities rather than having dues, which we greatly appreciate from our county friends here. Several years ago, we put into practice basically a CPI adjustment on the county contribution, which is a 3-year rolling average for the past 3 years. And so this year you can see a 2.6% increase. So county folks, this is what you would be anticipating to need to build into your 2023 county budget. Okay, a 2.6% increase. And the rates, the amounts are tied to the number of voting members, which is tied to the relative share of the population, basically. Okay, so federal funds, state funds, local funds. I didn't go through all the details, but I'm happy to talk about anything else on the revenue side. But I'm going to pause there before turning to the expenditure side. Does anybody have any questions or comments about the revenue picture?
Well, I have a question, and it's kind of revenue and expenditure at the same
Yep.
time.
Okay.
So your budget memo on page 2 says that the budget for fiscal year 23 shows an increase of 10% over estimated 22 expenditures,
Yep, that's here.
but a decrease of 17% below the fiscal year 22 budget. Is that just because of the additional income that we're receiving? Is that how that's factored in?
This is exactly the right question and a perfect segue actually to the expenditure side. So thank you. What you're pointing out is a dynamic in the way that our budget works. So it is less, to answer your question directly, no, it is not mainly about the revenues that are coming in. It is more that up, down, up that we sort of see every time in our budget is more reflective of the nature of the way we do our budgeting and our expenditures. Okay, and I'll explain that here. The way that I can explain that, I think, is looking at actually, so you see here between 22 budgeted and then the 22 estimated spending, it's significantly down. And then it goes back up by that 10% that you noted to 23 proposed. The best way I think to understand this is actually to look at our expenditure by function just a little bit more. Our budget is actually pretty simple in terms of the expenditure side, okay? By far, our 2 largest items are our salaries and employee benefits and our contractual. And if you look, you can see the majority of the fluctuation that you would see in the overall budget is at play in the contractual line item. You see 2.1 million to 7 million to 4.5 million to 4.3 million. And one could rightly say, what the heck is going on there? So I'll tell you, what goes on in our contractual line item is that we have a lot of projects, most notably our entire TLC program that is multi-year in nature, are multi-year in nature. And the way we do our budgeting is that we put the entirety of a presumed contractual expenditure in the first year. And then as the years go by, as the year goes by, that project will often carry over into a second year or even a third year. And so what we do is we budget all of it in the first year. And then the term we use is we carry that revenue forward. We make adjustments as we see how the project goes and the year goes, and we carry that money forward. So here in 21, the actual, it's relatively low, 2.1 million, and the 22 seems very, very high. That's because the 22 number reflects all of the new 22 contractual plus everything else that we had in 21 that didn't finish and carries over to 22. Then when you look at the 22 estimated spending, it drops down significantly. And there's one very notable piece at play there. This is an unusual one. We have one particular very significant contract for the household travel survey. Basically, every 10 years, we do a comprehensive survey on travel behaviors. That's about a $1.7 million contract for which we get contributions from our partners, UDOT, UTA, MAG, et cetera. But we budgeted all of that to happen in 22. But then actually we budgeted initially in 21, then the pandemic hit, which just made all travel behavior go completely screwy. And so we said, push it off. We pushed it to 22. We budgeted in 22, but we're not starting in 22. So now we pushed it into 23. So that 1.7 million is included in the 22. We don't think we're going to spend it in 22. So you see is at least 1.7 million of the drop down is that. We anticipate we're going to spend it in 23. So that's one critical thing that passes along. The other thing to anticipate, as I mentioned this already, is TLC. We are working on lots of TLC projects right now, and we have not yet determined how much of the project work or budget will carry forward into the next year. So a chunk of this FY22 estimated, when we finish out the year and we do all of our closeout accounting for the year, in October, we come back to you as part of our regular process and we say, here's where we ended the year on our contracts. Here's what we finished and here's what has to carry forward. We will drop down the 22 actual to some number below 4.5 and then carry some of that forward into FY23. Okay. So I'm sure hoping, Councilmember Winder Newton, that I'm getting at your question. This was something I needed, that it's like the most notable element of the way WFRC's budget works. It's predictable, but it makes things look a little nutty of jumping up and down.
Well, and I get that. If you'll point these two things out to me on your spreadsheet, I'll know, I'll be able to figure out the rest. So you say that you have a 10% expenditure increase. I assume that's this number down here under estimated 22 versus proposed 23.
Yeah, so that's the difference between
right?
This 9.5 and the 10.4 is about a 10% increase from the estimated 22 to proposed 23, correct?
Yeah, so I got that piece. The two numbers I want to look at are what's making up the 17% budget decrease, and show me those two numbers, and then I'll be able to figure out
Got it.
how all that works. I couldn't figure out where those two numbers were.
So basically I gave a really long answer and I
It's
didn't
okay.
answer your question. But I needed to cover that anyway, so
Yeah, it was great.
not wasted words. That's this number, the 12.7 compared to the 10.4. That is a 17% decrease from
I
budget
see.
of 22 to budget of 23.
Okay, so you're using the estimated versus the budgeted to compare those two. Okay, I'm good. That's all I needed clarity on. Thank you.
Okay. Now Andrea's laughing at me for doing what I just did. But nonetheless, we covered now, unless anybody has questions, one of the key items that is at play in our budget, which I wanted to talk to you about anyway, which is what happens in our contractual. Okay. The other key thing to talk about is our salaries and employee benefits line item here. And this is Mayor Caldwell and Mayor Silvestrini already sort of implicitly got at this issue. But what we've got in our budget, hold on, I'm just turning to the portion in the memo. Again, all of this was laid out in the memo, but what we have at play here in the budget is, you see, just sort of Councilmember Winder Newton, back to your sort of point about where the numbers are. From the estimated 22 to the proposed budget for 23 in this line item, a 22% total increase, which again is actually not a 22% increase from the budgeted 22 to 23. It's less than that, but estimated spending goes up by 22%. Okay. That line item covers our 30 full-time employees, assuming them being no vacancies over the course of the entire year. One of the reasons that the 22 estimated is below the 22 budget is because we did have some vacancies during the course of the year. So we didn't spend 12 months of 30 people. Okay. It also includes 2 new FTEs. One of them, I mentioned already, is essentially funded by the new $150,000 that we're getting from the state. And the other one is, well, both of these positions would be in our community and economic development group. That's the group that Megan Townsend is the coordinator for. The other one essentially would be funded out of the increase in the federal funds that we have coming into us, okay, that I mentioned already. So we have the revenues to cover those 2 positions, 30 full-time employees. So those things represent, in terms of the 22% total, assuming full-time 30 people plus 2, that's a portion of that. Now, also built into that is something that we normally do every year, is we build in almost every year, it is a 5% overall increase in that line item, in the base of that line, from the base of that line item, essentially, to cover all adjustments to employee costs, COLA, merit increases, promotions, group health insurance adjustments, et cetera. 5% normally.
Andrew, is
last-
that enough? Is that enough?
Well, it is not enough. And this is what I wanted to talk to you about and get your reactions to. Normally, we do 5%. What we've done this year in the budget is we've put in 10%. And I'm not positive that's the right number, 10%, but we put in 10% rather than 5%. And what's going on there is 2 things. One is that, as I mentioned, last year we initiated an employee compensation salary survey, and we evaluated our compensation structure. We're actually still in the process of doing this, evaluating our compensation structures relative to market peers here in Utah and around the country, to make sure that we're providing competitive benefits and, well, maybe competitive salaries to our employees. And part of the reason that you all know that that's so important is that we are existing in a really historically tight labor market. And we've got an amazing team at WFRC, and we want to make sure we're treating them fairly and keeping them. So we wanted to evaluate our compensation. We started all that work and knew that we were going to have to do more than the 5% already. And now we're in this historical inflationary environment. And so we said, rather than 5, 10, to allow us to make some market-based, to do normal adjustments and promotions, but then also make some targeted market-based adjustments where needed, reflecting the results of that compensation and salary survey. And then also trying to deal with the inflationary environment. So that's the other element, the 10% that's at play there. So I don't know, I guess I'd love to have sort of reactions to this.
Well, here's my reaction, Andrew. I mean, I've been involved in a number of discussions with other municipalities about, that inflationary pressure that we're under. And, we know that inflation, if you include fuel, and why wouldn't you include fuel and food, is over 7%, almost 8%. And so a lot of municipalities are going to be making a move to adjust that. And I think a lot of private employers will be doing that as well. And, frankly, given the competitiveness about labor in general, and the fact that, you've got a bunch of consultants out there that could hire our people and, possibly pay them more money. But, I think that's a risk to us. So I frankly would recommend that we increase that 10% to something, a little bit more than that, at least 12%, to give you the flexibility. And we'll have to decide on this about what to do with it after you get your compensation work back. But I think we'd better build the flexibility in there. We don't have to spend it, but having the flexibility in there to be able to go a little bit higher, because I suspect you're going to need to go higher, and we can't afford to lose people.
So I'll just have a little alternate view. I'd rather keep it where it is at the 10% that you've suggested. And then when you get your results back, at that point, let's look at it and see if we need to do something different.
One thing I should note, just sort of maybe.
Bob, I think you're on mute.
Yeah. Andrew, what do you figure the chances are that you're going to keep 100% of the employees? I mean, I agree with what Jeff is saying, that, it doesn't hurt, but at the same time, if we end up building more money into that 10%, simply because using less of the 10% in a sense, because, we have vacancies, here and there during the year, there could be, more dollars to be able to utilize, but, what's your call?
Yeah, who knows? I mean, I'd love to say I'm confident we'll keep everybody, but of course, things change and people leave, and then you have to go out and recruit other people. So that's not entirely clear. It would be unrealistic to think that we'd have complete stability. I should note as a matter of practice here, that the way that we have done this historically is that the budget, this line item and the entirety of the budget acts as a cap on our spending. Okay, it is, and we do not try to spend to the cap. We do not operate on a use it or lose it kind of situation. In fact, we routinely come in and try to come in below budget. So when you budget, when the committee and the council budgets at any level, contracts, personnel, whatever, it gives us the flexibility to work within that, but not spend up to it. And that's a structure that I think has worked quite well over time. So I just want to be clear, like if we factor in 10% or 12%, that does not mean we spend all of that under any circumstance. It gives us the flexibility to make determinations within that up to that range. And then if we ever did want to go beyond that range, it would necessitate coming back to the budget committee and the council to get.
Are you very comfortable with the 10% number, or would you feel more comfortable with the 12% number?
I mean, I guess to be honest, like I would, the larger that number is, the more comfortable I am, because it gives us more flexibility for me to make adjustments with the staff as are necessary. I mean, I'm just being candid.
I appreciate that. And I appreciate the comment about 12%. I mean, we're going over 10 in some of our areas. And when you look at the cost to train up a police officer, we're $86,000 to put a police officer through training and post and everything else. And then they just get gobbled up and there's a weird, so I'm wearing my WFRC hat, not my Ogden City hat. And I think having a little more flexibility for you as the WFRC executive director and everything else, I'm really supportive of that, because by the time you bring somebody in, train them up, get them into the culture and everything else, it's a crazy labor market right now. And so I would be very happy to support the 12%.
The other thing that I'll say about this is the way this organization works. You know, if we have the internal horsepower to do some of the work, then great. But when we don't, what ends up happening is consultants get hired. And I think that they end up costing more money than when our own staff does things. So, you know, we have to be mindful of retaining our employees, because they have lots of other opportunities. And if we don't retain them for a few pennies of extra, compensation, we'll pay more to consultants in the long run by not doing that.
So Andrew, let me ask you one more question. So if hypothetically I worked for you and I'd been there for a couple of years and it was productive, and I walked in and said, you know what, Andrew, I've been offered a job with Ogden City. Would you try to keep me? Would you turn around and say, you know, let's visit for a second? And I said, well, I know the mayor's going to be up for a re-election and he's not going to get re-elected, so that'll resolve one problem. Would you try to retain me by offering me more money?
Bob, if it was you, I'd say good luck in Ogden. That sounds like a great approach for you. Just kidding. Generally, if we have an employee who is an exceptional employee and they're lured away to somewhere else by higher compensation, yes, we will try to, have a little flexibility built in so that we can, if that's the issue, that we can negotiate somewhat. We're never going to be in a position to completely compete with the private sector. We understand that. We're not going to try to do that. There's a lot of benefits that come from working in the public sector. So within reason, we would do that. And, that again is some of the flexibility that's built into the way that we do our budget, which I think has been healthy and productive. I should note here, just to make sure that we're all clear on this. When we're talking about these numbers, any of these numbers, 5%, 10%, 12%, whatever the numbers are that we're talking about, that does not mean that we are saying that we're going to give 10% increases to our employees or 12% increases to our employees. That is not what I'm saying. Okay, that is a cap on the revenues that are available to do all of the things: health insurance adjustments, COLA, merit, promotion, market adjustments. It is a cap that then I'm able to work within in working with the employees. The other thing I should mention also that I didn't yet is that between now and the May, when we come back with all these materials, we will always do a survey separate from the survey I was just talking about, but we check in with you all and your community, cities and counties in the region to see what are you all doing, because we never, WFRC, we never want to be out of line with what you all are doing. I'm not saying exactly in line, but we don't want to be at the top and we don't want to be at the bottom. But this year we were already knowing, because it's been years since we've done a market analysis, that we were going to need to do some catch up, because most of our employees are planners, they're engineers, they're GIS folks, and we are competing with the private sector. And that's part of the issue that's at play here, our wage pressures relative to the market. So we'll do whatever you all want.
Yeah,
but that's
and
just a little
Andrew,
context.
part of the reason why I asked that question is that, and I think Mike hit it on the nail on the head, is that this is just a strange couple of years, and with this inflation and everything and all the job market the way it is that we may find over the next 12, 18 months, as it's been over the past 12 and 18 months, that there's people coming and going and inflation is high and we've got to make adjustments. And so I'm probably in favor of saying, you know what, let's put a couple of percentage higher in there and let's have it there in case we run into those problems.
Hey, and Bob, if you want to come run for Weaver County Commissioner,
No.
we'll raise that rate a bunch for you.
So I'm fine with the 12%. One of the questions I guess I would have is, what if it's 13? What if it's 14? Remind me what the process is. Yeah, I mean, is it a very major process if you have to come back and ask for a bigger percentage? Because I mean, at this point, if it's not, then who cares what the percentage is? We just, can meet and adjust that if we need to. Remind me what the process is again.
Yeah, if we ended up, and actually, if Lovett wants to, with her historical knowledge, wants to offer any comments on this, Lovett, I'll turn to you in just a sec. But what we would do anytime the line item, anytime we needed to, and I can't even remember the last time we've ever done this, but anytime we would need to come back and say that line item in the aggregate is not enough to cover what we need, we would go through a budget amendment process. We would present it to the budget committee, we would present it to the council, and we would do a budget amendment. Within our other line items, we actually have a process in our accounting policy that allows for adjustments within some of the line items, like printing and publication and equipment maintenance. We have the ability to move some stuff around. But we do have a budget process that we do if we needed to do amendments, which we rarely do.
Amy, I've been on the executive committee for WFRC for 10 years. I cannot remember mid-year or other kind of budget amendments that have come up. They've been exceedingly careful about how they've planned and budgeted and communicated to their employees. So I'm going to give that credit to Andrew. We have never had any of that come up. And I think they've done a really amazing job of doing some of that.
Thanks. Let's give Lovett gets a lot of credit for that. Also, Lovett, do you want to, in response to Councilmember Winder Newton's, do you have any other thoughts you want to add to that?
Yeah, I would just go back to the comment you made earlier about looking at all of our funding sources when this budget was put together and getting all of the pieces in place. And if we were to go back later and say, well, we need to, have a bigger number in payroll, we would have to find a way to, we have to find that money somewhere. And you can go out and obligate more money from the federal government, but that's a more difficult process. It's easier to go ahead and obligate it and then not spend it, and it goes back in the pot to be rebudgeted at some point later. So you
Okay,
know, I hear your fears. That sounds like an awfully big number, but keep in mind that it's a cap. And he's not
Yeah,
talking about giving everyone a raise. He's talking about certain targeted things that we need to do to keep the staff that we have. So,
well, I understand that, and I'm not worried or nor did I think we were spending every dime that we have allocated. What I'm trying to assess is what, if we don't really know what this percentage is and we really don't have an idea, how are we picking this number, and how big of a deal is it to go back later if we need to change it? It sounds like we're better to err on the higher side, on the 12% side, and then bring it down from there. But I don't know that it matters either way, because it sounds like there's a way to fix it no matter what this comes in at. So
Well,
yeah, I'm good either way. So thank you.
Thank you.
I'd say that we go with the 12%, and I think we should be okay with that.
And to my point, I think we give that to the executive director and he gets to come back and sell that to the council and everything else. So it's not like he just gets to indiscriminately say, well, you get this and you get this and you get this. He's got to bring every one of those things back to the council for consideration.
Well, can I just interject for 1 sec? Because I want to make sure we're really clear on what that means. We bring all of the line items and the explanation to the budget committee and the council. You have historically, as a council, given the executive director within the budget the authority to have flexibility around how we're allocating the resources within the line items. And we keep you informed of everything and we want your input. But I just want to make sure we're being clear that.
So what I'm hearing is up to 12%.
Yeah, and that what that 12% is in this case is a component. I'm still sharing my screen, aren't I? Am I still sharing my screen? Okay. This number right here, this 4.9, a portion of that is a 12% increase over the previous year base. I'm sorry, a 10% increase. So what would happen is that number would go up incrementally by the difference between 10% and 12%. Okay. My legal control from a budgetary perspective would be to not spend beyond what that number becomes, with a modest adjustment of going from that one factor in there from 10% to 12%. Within that, you ascribe to me the responsibility per our policies and per your actions of saying, now you navigate, keep us informed, but navigate within that in terms of employee compensation and benefits, et cetera, et cetera. So I just want to make sure we're clear. That's the way we've done it over the years, and I think it's worked really well.
So Mr. Chair, do you need a motion on this budget? Because I'm happy to
Yes,
make
we do.
one.
Yes,
Do?
we do. Thank you very much.
So I move that we support the recommended budget with the one difference being an additional 2% on that employee compensation amount.
All right, Bob's throwing up the double fingers. Is that a peace sign or a second? All right, we have a first and a second. Are there all in favor, say aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that passes. Andrew, do you have marching orders?
Yes, we will do that modest adjustment to the budget as we discussed, and then distribute all of these materials to the council for review next week at the
Okay.
council.
Okay, sounds good.
And hey, I just want to say thanks. This issue of employee compensation in this environment is essential. We're all dealing with it. And thanks y'all for taking time to really talk it through and give input. And I definitely, we will stay in touch with you as a budget committee as we move through this process. Okay.
Thank you very much.
So that's it, Mr. Chair and everybody. That's all we've got for you today. That was the, I realize Wayne's about to jump in and tell me, wait, you actually took separate motions on the goals and on the budget. We didn't talk about, but it's all included in your materials, the draft unified planning work program, which lays out in a lot of detail all of the activities that we may work on. We have put that together per federal law. It was in the packet. So given that we've done separate motions, we would also need a motion to recommend that Unified
I
Planning
move-
Work Program.
I move that we recommend the fiscal year 2023 Unified Work or Planning Work Program.
I'll second that.
Okay, first and second, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, you got marching orders. Thanks, Andrew.
Awesome.
And good luck to Jeff on his new groundbreaking and everything else. And with that, Bob, you want to make my favorite motion?
I make a motion, we adjourn.
There you go. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Andrew, keep doing what you're doing. Thank
Thank
you.
you,
very much.
everybody. Really
Everybody.
appreciate all of you. Thanks.
Good luck, Kurt.
Thank you, Commissioner. I appreciate it all. And I want to just take 1 second and thank Andrew, especially. I really appreciate the support he's given me through the entire time I've been there and with the decision. He has been very supportive and I appreciate that so much of him.
It was fun to get reacquainted with you, Kurt. Take care.